How do you as a user actually interact on TikTok?
Define viral.
Viral doesn't have a full definition.
Let's whip out our stats slide.
Virality often feels spontaneous and unplanned, and that doesn't necessarily correlate with great marketing.
Common myth that what we do isn't a real job. Welcome back to Have You Heard, the social media podcast by us here at The Social Shepherd. My name is Zoe. I'm one of the co-founders, and today I'm joined by the lovely Bobby.
Hi.
Bobby is a senior social media manager here at The Social Shepherd.
Indeed.
So today we've been placed with the lovely task of debunking some social media myths, kind of like common misconceptions. So we've got a little plan, which is why I'm going to get my phone out to go through it. But I think the first place we were going to start is like general myths and stuff like that people have about social media strategy, and kind of start there. So one of the ones that we've been asked to discuss is the fact that you should be on every single platform. Thoughts and feelings about that, Bobby?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the social strategy misconceptions, they're numerous, and I think...
And we hear a lot of them commonly, like...
Yeah.
There's a lot of memes online, like certain things that you'll hear and it's like social media managers when someone says X, Y, Z.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think when you look at the platforms and where you should be, absolutely shouldn't be on every platform if it's not right. I think that's just such a broad statement.
Yeah.
That's not looking at individual clients and their needs.
Yeah,
and all
like
of that.
Social is a marketing channel, but it's become so much more diverse. Do you know what I mean? Like the way in which people use TikTok. Like, yes, it's a social platform because people can converse with one another, but it's much more of an entertainment platform because significantly less people are publishing their own content than those that are actually observing it. Whereas Instagram is becoming more of a community driving channel.
Yes, exactly. And you don't want just to be there on everything for the sake of it. I think that actually leaves people sometimes feeling disconnected from the brand and like they're just trying to flog their brand to you everywhere they can, rather than thinking about how they're actually speaking to a community and tailoring it for that audience.
And also, like, running social these days is so much harder than it used to be.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so if you can't do all of it well, then don't do all of it. You would be better to focus on one channel and one platform and do that really well than focus on 4 and do them all just like average.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's a really easy mistake to make. Spread your team too thin and then you're not really making impact anywhere. You're just kind of spreading a bit of message everywhere and it's not driving any objectives or goals. You're not converting people the way you want to and you're not connecting with the community correctly. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, cool. Next one is, and this is one we can resonate with, is that people really put an emphasis on follower count. So the myth is follower count is everything.
Yeah.
And I think that we do have to have a lot of conversations with clients where they'll be like, our main objective is follower growth. And we're like, okay, yeah, you can do that. And there's tactics that you can use to really kind of like increase the rate of follower growth. But the important thing is actually the size of your total audience. And I think particularly with platforms like TikTok, you could have 20 followers on TikTok, but you could have a video that reaches 200,000 people.
Yeah.
So I actually like to flip this one and think about the size of the total audience that you're reaching, not necessarily the number of followers, because that is a vanity metric.
Absolutely. And I think TikTok's a really interesting one because followers there, you've got to think about user behavior. How do you as a user actually interact on TikTok? I know I go and open TikTok, see loads of brands that I love on the For You page. I don't follow a single one of them though. So it's irrelevant really whether you're following them or not. I guess there's a point potentially around having authority in a space when people go click on your profile, look at your page, and a sizable following, I guess, can be a good thing. But it really is capped at that. Like the way you're reaching people specifically on TikTok is going to be through the For You page. So looking at your views and the traffic source coming via the FYP is going to be much more important than looking at following. I guess other platforms are different.
Yeah, like I was going to say Instagram, for example, because if you are following, then you're going to reach that person via stories, which is really valuable. And that's an easier way for you to drive traffic through to the website.
Yes, and from an algorithm point of view on Instagram, there are different criteria for what's going to make your content discoverable and pushed out to more people. And one of those is size of your audience or the way that your users interact with you and your followers interact with you. So I think there is a bit more value on Instagram if you want to reach high people. High followings tend to work in tandem. But it's not to say they are the most important thing there.
Yeah, I'd
especially
agree.
from a long-term strategy point of view. So,
and I think the other thing to just be mindful of on Instagram is like you said, having it as your core metric, a little bit tricky, and kind of putting pressure to inauthentically grow it, because you could run a competition every single week and give away $5,000 every week and you're going to get a whole load of followers, but those people are there for the wrong reasons. They haven't actually bought into it. So it does need to be longer term, because in the same way that, it takes 6 or 7 touch points for someone to purchase something, it's going to take at least 2 or 3 touch points for someone to think, actually, this brand's producing content that's of value for me to follow.
Yeah,
so absolutely. I think people need to have a bit of patience with follower growth.
Yes.
So I think that's super important as well. You only reach young people on social is apparently a common misconception. I think we're growing out of that though. Like I think if like a year ago someone was coming to us, particularly from TikTok, they were like, you might have the odd client that would go, yeah, but I don't want to reach teenagers. And then we would be like, let's whip out our stats slide. But I think people are kind of coming around to that a little bit more. And there is such a more diverse, YouTube's always been a bit of an iffy one as to whether people include it in social or not. It is a social channel. Yeah. But now that we've got shorts, for example, every single platform has such a diverse range of people on it now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it is outdated to say you're only reaching young people on social. It's so funny. I mean, platforms evolve all the time. So if you look at something like Facebook, that really now is for an older generation of people. Just again, thinking back to how people actually use it, the classic kind of assumption is that it's all mums on Facebook chatting in their community neighborhood groups, or retired people connecting with their friends. Like there is a massive community of people on there on Facebook, and you shouldn't disregard that. And the reach, and a lot of people just go,
oh, Facebook's dead, and it's like, well, it's actually not.
It's just changed.
Particularly from like a paid perspective, like it still outperforms Instagram on a ROAS perspective and the amount of people that purchase through it. So I think actually sometimes it can go the other way, where people have a misconception that you can only reach younger people. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's funny because we're talking about misconceptions and then relating that to demographics and audiences. I guess like a really big misconception and assumption when you think about like a social media manager and what they do is think of like the Emily in Paris trope. Yeah. That's so classic. And I think everyone, when they think of that, there's 2 points in terms of what they're doing in the show. And the first is that she's showing like viral content, and that being a marker of success. And that does kind of correlate with a younger audience. However, if you want to connect with older audiences, or a different way of connecting with people, you can look at longer term strategies, and that's not the same as viral content.
Yeah, they are 2 different things. I guess that's why we split our retainers into BAU and then campaign on top of it. And we always say like you can't just turn on a campaign, if that makes sense. Like you need to have built up a community and kind of like an understanding there, but it is different.
Yeah.
That actually leads into the next point, is that the most important thing is to go viral. And like define viral.
Yeah. Well, viral doesn't have like a full definition. Yeah. We rank it set differently in the agency to how other people rank it. Here at TSS, we do 100K views on TikTok, so our marker of virality on TikTok. Instagram, it would probably be around 100K too. But again, it depends on the size of your following. If you're working on an account with almost 1 million followers,
that's not really going to be too much on it.
That's your average monthly reach on a reel. So it is very different. I think virality just means you've started something in a community a lot of the time. And
virality doesn't necessarily have to be like one piece of content either. It could be like a series that you're posting regularly that you become known for, and people are like, oh, have you seen this from this brand? It's really cool type thing.
Yeah.
And it can also be cumulative as well. Yeah, I mean, I just wouldn't say it's the most important thing. Like you can gain a lot from a consistent social media strategy that has really good results every single post, rather than having this kind of like peak down.
And it depends what you're looking at. I think if you're looking at metrics that correlate with virality, then it is important to a degree. It's always going to look good. If you go viral, it means your total reaches are bigger. You've got more followers, you've got more profile visits, you've got more web clicks. Often they go hand in hand. So that is really encouraging and can be a really good success. I think most brands would want a viral moment, but sentiment's important there. What are you going viral for?
And it's also like the frequency of things, because if you think about like if you posted one piece of content, that's all you posted, and that got 1 million views. But if you posted 30 pieces of content and altogether they got 1 million views, then what's actually more valuable? And it's probably the latter, because you're hitting people with multiple different brand touch points as opposed to just one.
And I think as well, going back to the Emily in Paris point, virality often feels spontaneous and unplanned. And that doesn't necessarily correlate with great marketing. You can put a lot of energy into long-term plans that paint a more traditional marketing approach to a brand and its message and how you're communicating that to the community. That in a way can be much more valuable to a brand than a viral moment where you just get loads of views for a really short amount of time and it mean not much or not connect with the brand in the same way.
Yeah, because I think particularly on TikTok, you'll get a lot of viral moments that will just come from the community. Like some person will put like some outrageous comment on something, and then it's a viral moment, but actually what piece of content is that behind? Is it going to increase positive sentiment towards the brand? Is it going to have any type of like equity in there?
Yeah, precisely.
So define viral, and if you are going viral, it needs to be on the right things, if that makes sense. This is a statement one. So people saying it got no likes because Instagram's algorithm didn't even show it to anyone. So I think there's a couple of things in there. Is the algorithm not showing things to anyone?
Yes.
Because, if no one saw it, then it probably isn't going to get any likes. So that's kind of the statement that we're unpicking there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, blame it on the algorithm. That's a classic approach at times.
It's a little bit lazy.
It's a bit of a reaction.
Yeah.
And it can be a cop-out. I don't always think it is, to be fair. That
It's
algorithm
not.
does dictate a lot. But
It does, but you can't just because you post like one piece of content and it doesn't perform well doesn't mean that you should never post that piece of content again. Like you do need to test and learn on it, because like you said, the algorithm is unpredictable at times.
Yes, yeah.
So I think that's where like testing and learning really comes into play. I mean, it is worth to say that like organic reach isn't what it used to be, and you see that across the board. Like you're now seeing that with TikTok. There is a level of saturation on the platform now, but that's not to say you can't get it. You just got to be smarter about it in certain ways and have a strategy that understands the algorithm and knows that having a one-hit wonder isn't really what you want nor what you should be planning for.
Precisely. And I think if you're thinking in the context of likes in particular, that's really different too. The way people interact with posts has changed. And you can get some of your highest reaching video content on Instagram to a reel. Like they can actually reach so many more people and will have sometimes some of your lowest engagement rates by nature and the way people interact with it. But it's not as valuable
for video content because to a consumer or someone that's using the platform, to them, the engagement is the fact they've spent 45 seconds of their time watching that video type thing. It doesn't equate to the same thing. And I think when we're talking about brands versus personal accounts, when you go and like your best friend's post of them, their holiday in France, for example, it's a very different relationship. You're almost like validating that individual in that moment, whereas it doesn't come as authentically to people anymore to validate a brand.
Exactly.
And I guess that's where you've got to think harder about your content is, does it have a message that resonates with that individual? Is it going to evoke some type of response, and that's why it needs to have a purpose behind it.
Yeah, and that's why we do the weighted engagement rate, which upweights comments, saves, shares over likes, because actually they're more indicative of like a real reaction or some kind of purposeful next step for the user. So yeah.
And I think it's also like, you know, if we think about bringing paid into the mix and kind of flipping it back to the follower thing, you could run a follower campaign of page likes on Facebook, and you're going to get a 2p cost per follower. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Like, it's pointless. Like, okay, yes, if the CEO of your business is like, I want more followers and I don't care where they come from, you can do that, but you are wasting money. Like, you are literally putting it down the drain. And the same way that, you know, you can run engagement campaigns and there is value in them at times, particularly, you know, getting learnings through a paid account and stuff like that. But if you put an engagement objective behind a piece of content, you are going to get engagements, because it's literally just going to find people that are going to like it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of understanding the value of things and where you're investing your time and stuff like that.
Work on the quality over quantity, definitely.
100%. And then there's some myths that we've got to answer about being, like, working in social, basically. Because I think I was actually on a shoot the other day, and the team were filming with quite a big production team. And we had a hair and makeup artist there that had never worked on a social shoot before. Wow. And the team had, like, you know, we've got really impressive kit set up, all these like super expensive lights that cost like thousands and thousands of pounds. And they're like getting ready for us to get out this like huge camera and start filming. And we're like, with our iPhone, like, there we go. And they were like, oh, this is, and I was like, yeah, like, we want to shoot it. It's social content. Obviously, you may shoot some stuff on camera and stuff, but there is like a common myth that what we do isn't a real job and that we just sit there scrolling all day long.
Yeah, exactly. You can just whip out the phone, take a picture, and it goes viral.
Yeah.
It's not that simple.
No, it's not. I wish it was. But I think what people don't realize is, like, you know, if you look at our job specs for someone that works in organic social, which is organic and paid are different. They have different skill sets, but they do overlap. But an organic social media manager has to be really creative and technically minded at the exact same time, which is actually, they're two very different skill sets and characteristics that don't necessarily come like to a lot of people in the same handfuls. Yeah,
I think a lot of people don't realize, actually, you know, 80% of a social media manager's job is insights analysis and reporting. So that's potentially really different to what people perceive it to be, which might be like taking content and taking photos and then uploading it and kind of leaving it there and just going with their gut. There is a lot more planning and
contextualizing and SEO research, for example, and, like, you know, what we're really trying to do is be visible where people want to find us, if that makes sense. So there's a whole lot of research there. You've got to create the physical content, come up with all the copy, make sure it's algorithmically friendly. Then you've got to report on the other side of it, take those learnings, apply that to your strategy. There is a lot that goes into it.
And align as well with wider marketing activity from the clients. I think that's something that's really underestimated, but so much of our feedback from clients is based on what the rest of their team, that we don't know who they are, what they're doing. And it's always based on what that activity is. And that informs everything we do. So we need to make sure our strategies are aligning with theirs, because otherwise they'll turn around and go, oh, well, the social's not right at the end of the day, and just scrap everything you've done. So there's always needs to be that line of communication with them, making sure you're understanding what it is that you're wanting to achieve out of these channels. And then we can make the content to fit that and help you reach your goals.
Yeah, exactly. And I think some of the confusion comes from the industry is still confused as to where to place social. We've got some clients where social sits as part of their brand team. Some clients where social sits as part of their PR team. And I'm going to be fully honest, PR and social can work very well together, but they also can work very badly together at the same time, because PR objectives are very different to social objectives. But that's a whole other story. But I think people struggle to know where to place it.
I mean, it used to be, I'm sure 10 years ago, a marketing team probably won't have a social media department. It'll probably be the youngest member on the team does it alongside their email marketing role or something like that. So that's changed. There's now, I think, a second you see some of the revenue returns on social and investing in a proper team and a proper strategy and upping the quality of that, it's then clear that you need a bigger team that's actually dedicated to it, because there's so much to do it properly. You need so much manpower.
You do. And I think a lot of people actually fall into the mix, particularly with TikTok, where they just like go, we'll give it to the intern.
Yeah.
And you'll get really good results from doing that. Don't get me wrong, because they're going to be completely native to the platform.
Yeah.
They're going to understand the hooks and narratives. But what you will end up with is at times quite generic content that kind of everyone is doing. And you've also got to be mindful of, you could get 1 million views on a piece of content because you've used a trending sound and it's funny and it aligns with the Gen Z audience. But what value is that bringing to the brand? And the harder challenge actually is realigning like what you're trying to achieve from around, like, we want to talk about this specific product in this way. And that's the challenge there.
Yeah.
So we've gone off-piste, but social media is a real job. Oh yeah, the next one was interns run social media accounts. Sometimes they do, but I think it only works if you've got a team or an agency behind that person guiding them and looking at the data. And, you know, we're quite technical in our approach to a lot of things, and we have content strategies, and attribution for organic social is a nightmare. We all know that, but we do our best to really delve into it. And that's really where interns are going to need that support. Is quite a lot of people come into organic social and they've got the creative side of it, and that just needs a bit more developing and maturing. But the technical side is really difficult because you are basically like data analysts at the same time.
Yeah, precisely.
So yeah, sometimes they do. I'm not going to lie, but they need some support too. Oh yeah, one person can do it all. We see a lot of this, like social media manager has to be a videographer, also has to be able to do this and this and this. And I think that comes down to the core of why we started this business, because we've got it all broken down. Like, we've got the teams that manage the content, the teams that create the content, the teams that liaise with any influencers that are making content, the paid team. So I think a lot of companies do expect one person to do it all, but they're not going to get the best from that.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people come to bigger agencies from backgrounds where they kind of have done a bit of everything. So they've kind of touched on a few different jobs and a few different roles, can do a bit of a varied set of responsibilities and roles, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're an expert in any.
Yeah, and we actually get a lot of people come here, so they'll have been in a broader social role. They maybe have worked at a small company in-house, and they'll come and join us as an exec or a senior exec, and they're like, it's so nice to be here and everyone knows what they're actually talking about. Like, I can have informed conversations with people rather than them just being the most junior person in a team and trying to like muddle their way through it, and it can change quite a lot. So the answer is that no, not one person can do it all. People definitely need support. Well, they can't do it all well.
Exactly. And they'll be really stressed if they try, to be honest.
Yeah. And then the final one about the role is that only young people work in social. And I mean, I'm not going to lie, I had to do this calculation the other day because someone asked for it, but the average age of in here is 28, which I guess is quite young.
Yeah, it's young.
But marketing agencies tend to have quite young staff anyway. But not everyone is young. But I guess there is probably a higher percentage than in other even marketing channels, because we've grown up with it and like we're native users of it.
It's actually, I mean, it's a new industry really, relatively speaking. So you're not going to have someone coming to a social media agency with 40 years of social media experience. They'll have other backgrounds that maybe evolve into fitting social media and working in that industry. But no one's an expert of decades because it's just not been around. So it's easy for younger people to start and pioneer a new industry because they're growing up with it, as you said, and then it's kind of naturally allows them to become the experts that are shaping the industry.
Yeah. And I think the thing is, it's not that only young people can work in the industry. I think there's just a higher percentage. Like, there are people in their 40s and 50s and 60s that are working in social, and there's definitely a place for that. I think it's just, you know, maybe you've grown and you've worked in SEO, for example, or like a broader digital marketing role.
Yeah.
And then it's just about adapting those principles over to social. So there's absolutely space, and there are people that aren't kind of in your age 30 and under bracket. But yeah, so it's not only young people that work in social, but there's quite a few. Cool. Okay. Well, look, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully that was helpful. And if you've got any other myths that you'd like us to respond to, then please let us know. But yeah, thanks for listening, and like and subscribe. I think I'm supposed to say that, aren't I? Yeah. Like and subscribe.